Hello, Professor. Hello, everyone. We are sorry to have met you in such a way. It's no offense, but just as transphobic people are afraid of trans people, we decided to take such a presentation because we are afraid of the epidemic to some extent. Next, we will show you a video interview with several transgender people.
I have my work locker graffitied. I get people connected to people I work with, send me messages on Facebook, prank phone calls, not invited to nights out at work, ostracized by certain people.
I remember once I got a train back from Brighton quite late at night. This quite drunk older man came on, and it was actually probably more homophobic than transphobic because I don't think he realised I was trans, but he was telling me that I looked like a woman, which was a really interesting thing for him to say because obviously I'm a trans man.
We definitely receive a lot of terrible comments online.
I mean, I think I get called a man and a pervert and a sex offender and
Every
all these
day.
things every single day on Twitter, for example. And it's just so bizarre, and I don't think people realize the effects this can have on people, whereas I have the ability to be able to disconnect from these comments and things, but people generally don't.
When it's kind of most crystallized is like just walking down the street and you get abuse, and sometimes it's hard to know whether it's trans misogyny or just good old-fashioned regular misogyny.
I think I kind of feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble sometimes where I think that everybody's just so accepting, and then yeah, it's a shock when you do hear something transphobic. It reminds you that there's still a lot more work to do to raise awareness.
People don't understand. They believe it's some type of psychological disorder. They believe, oh, you know, God made you one way and, you know, he doesn't make mistakes. And, you know, it's just a lot of fear. People have a full opinion with half the knowledge.
I was in a club and I went to the toilet and the security man was there and he said, get out, and then he got the other security man and they were banging on the door and I was trying to keep the door shut, just trying to pee.
Wow.
And they dragged me out of the toilet and it was just like, I don't know, I don't think that sort of thing happened anymore.
I applied for a job in a short film in a student project, and I got a response back saying we can't offer you the job because it has a sex scene and we haven't run it past the other actors that they'd be doing it with the trans person.
It really, really hurts me when, as I said, I'm a performer and you know, for example, a lot of my acts are based around me being trans and my identity and who I am. And then after that, people will still misgender me and I correct them and they still misgender me. And that's really, really hurtful because it means they just literally don't care about you, about your well-being. And they don't even take the time to think that actually it's really upsetting when you misgender me.
I feel like I can't go home and I feel like I can't be myself. Because like, especially like my dad is very gendered, so like if he calls me, he'll be like, "What's up, girl?" And I'm just like, "Come on, I came out to you like a year and a half ago." It hurts to know that my own family that I feel should be there for me aren't.
I was walking one night here in London and there was a lady across the street. It was dark. You know, I was shoe shopping. I still love shoes. That's not changed. So I'm shopping. I had a bag of shoes and I watched her cross the street out of fear of me being a black man and me being a man at night in the street. And that was huge to me. You know, a light bulb went off and I'm like, wow, wow.
A lot of people are very closed-minded and don't want to accept us. And unfortunately, it's something that we face daily.
Recently, there was a murder case which attracted public attention. There was a knife wounding incident in Jiangcheng Tianjie, Wuhan. The informed information by the police was as follows. March 9th afternoon, on the fourth floor of a men's toilet in one building in the Hankou, Fanhu, Jiangcheng Tianjie, the male suspect and the male victim in the same toilet after a verbal altercation occurred violent bloodshed. However, sources say that the victim's life image is female and was stripped of her clothes by the murderer. This case is suspected to be a case of a transgender woman being killed because of her identity. For a while, there was a lot of discussion online. Some netizens accused the official notification of withholding the information that the victim was a transgender woman, while others called for tolerance and respect for transgender people in this case. In addition, there were also opinions that it was still too early to conclude that the victim was transgender. It is not our intention to explore the truth of this incident, since much information is difficult to verify. What we want to bring up here is the concept of transgender and transphobia. Transgender, often shortened as trans, is also an umbrella term. In addition to including people whose gender identity is the opposite of their assigned sex, trans men and trans women, it may also include people who are non-binary or genderqueer. Other definitions of transgender also include people who belong to a third gender, or else conceptualize transgender people as a third gender. The term transgender may be defined very broadly to include cross-dressers. Accordingly, transphobia is a collection of ideas and phenomena that encompass a range of negative attitudes, feelings, or actions towards transgender people or transness in general. Transphobia can include fear, aversion, hatred, violence, anger, or discomfort felt or expressed towards people who do not conform to social gender expectations. It is often expressed alongside homophobic views, and hence is often considered an aspect of homophobia. Transphobia is a type of prejudice and discrimination, similar to racism and sexism, and transgender people of color are often subjected to all three forms of discrimination at once. A 2017 survey report on the current situation of transgender communities in many countries showed that transgender communities today show high demand and low satisfaction in hormone therapy and surgery. For example, their needs for hormone therapy and surgery cannot be fully met, which is related to the current lack of medical treatment for transgender communities in the world. At the same time, transgender people have low acceptance and support from their families of origin. They suffered domestic violence is very common, and they are often isolated. Poor intimate relationships, high rates of school violence, and high dropout rates, difficulties in employment, and poor mental health, depression, and self-harming behaviors is also could be observed in their lives.
Now take a deep breath and let's move into the Navaja Flat, a place of wild and primitive beauty. The man in the picture with long hair and mantle earrings, Apache, is one of the indigenous people of the Indian tribe. Apache is a two-spirit people with both female and male souls. He is physically male, but plays the role of a female in dress and work. In Indian philosophy, there are four sacred genders: male, female, those who are male outside but female inside, and those who are female outside but male inside. In fact, before the advent of the Western colonial era, many native tribes identified with gender pluralism until the French colonists came to America and found that at least 113 Indiana tribes existed a group between male and female. Barbara, a colonist, let loose dogs to bite 42 spirit people alive, which recorded in his journal. On the plain where all kinds of gender consciousness grow wild, the Western colonizers draw a clear dividing line, with male on the left and female on the right. Everything in the world can be divided into male and female according to their biological sex. When you walk into a clothing store, men's and women's clothes are in different sections. When you walk into a stadium, boys and girls each have different sports activities. As the Western-centered modernization process unfolds globally, the binary gender concept as a cultural appendage has also permeated all corners of the world and all aspects of our lives, so that we take it too much for granted. As a result, many people seem at a loss when dealing with transgender people, and the inertia of having to categorize people into some clear coordinates makes any gender other than male and female seems unacceptable. But if we change the logic, instead of treating male and female as incompatible opposing sides, we treat male and female as the two ends of the scale, with the middle coverage in ambiguous and blurred area where gender can have a wealth of possibilities. The plurality of gender is particularly notable in India's thousands of years of cultural tradition. As many as 20 to 28 genders are depicted in Indian scriptures. And in 2014, the Supreme Court of India recognized a third gender, the first time a modern judicial system has embraced unexpected gender for both men and women. This map marks areas of the world that are multicultural in gender. Transgender people should never be an object of fear. So how do we treat transgender people with an inclusive mindset? This is an issue that requires a concentrated effort for all parts of society.
And next, I would like to talk about how to treat transgender people. As for the schools, we all know that schools may be the most likely setting for bullying of trans people caused by transphobia. This phenomenon often greatly affects the rights of students to receive education, as well as the mental health and personal safety of those who are being bullied. So, a supportive school environment should be created, safe space should be created, and also there should be a clear voice against school bullying and active intervention. In addition, inclusive knowledge of sexual diversity should be integrated into the curriculum to establish a positive image of transgender others, to prevent transphobia and transphobic bullying, and to educate students to respect and accept different gender identities. School can also carry out comprehensive sexuality education programs, which can help children and young people acquire age-appropriate knowledge and skills, foster the values of respect, equality, diversity, and develop interpersonal skills and mental health. And in terms of society, a side of truly civilized, open, and just society should be the inclusion of a spirit and way of life that encourages and supports minorities. People, public institutions such as schools, shopping malls, stations, and prisons should have gender-neutral toilets. Transgender people should also be provided with freedom of choice and a safe space when arranging temporary housing in net stations and natural disaster relief. In addition, companies take the initiative to maintain the equal employment rights of transgender people and ensure that the working environment is gender-friendly as an important part of fulfilling corporate social responsibility. For example, Goldman Sachs and IBM's policies towards sexual and gender minority employees include provisions that prohibit discrimination and partner benefits. These measures will help create an atmosphere of inclusiveness, respect, understanding, mutual assistance, and sharing of the achievement of reform and opening up in a whole society, and promote the overall improvement of the situation of transgender people. And for the government, the Ministry of Education can require that textbooks be written to increase gender diversity and its equal rights. There are campus discrimination and even bullying against transgender people on campus. It is urgent for the MPC Standing Committee to issue the Gender Equality Education Law, which prohibits all forms of discrimination against transgender people, especially violence against transgender people, and stipulates that schools the obligation to prevent and suppress such conduct and its legal liability for non-compliance with its obligation. At the same time, in terms of employment, the government can issue relevant policies to ensure that transgender people enjoy equal employment treatment and rights. What's more, companies cannot discriminate against transgender people, and workers should not be discriminated against in the employment process based on personal gender perception and gender expression. In general, an individual gender identity and gender expression fall within the protection scope of general personality rights, and the gender identity and gender expression of others should be respected. However, from a social point of view, transgender groups are not only the vulnerable groups. Do not blindly pursue political correctness and ignore their vulnerable groups, such as the elderly, the weak, the sick, and the disabled. So I don't think we can overprotect the transgender community because it may backfire and make the transgender community less recognized. For example, in the Olympic weightlifting events, transgender female competitors should be restricted. Otherwise, the interests of other competitors should be heard. Because those transgender women are still preeminent to a certain extent in terms of muscle mass, impulsive power, etc. They may maintain that this physical strength of men are better than women, and then threaten to equality in women's competition. Also, it is true that under a new law in Switzerland, young men can register as women to avoid military service, as only men are required to do military service in the industry. In the country, widowers can also register as widows in order to receive higher government subsidy for Swiss women. These facts all show that we cannot over-pursue political correctness to overprotect transgender groups and violate the interests of other vulnerable groups. In conclusion, we ought to treat all vulnerable groups with equal treatment, not just the transgender group. This is our presentation. Thank you.